Torrin Collins remains victorious in Edmonton, but will he be able to stay consistent with a win on a wet track?
Welcome to RAD Torque Raceway, everyone. Marshall Ferguson alongside Colin Fraser. The wet conditions difficult for these Supersport riders, as you see Andrew Van Winkle in conversation with Marco Souza there, getting set to attack this track in what should be a difficult but enjoyable day for the riders to push the boundaries of what's possible.
Well, not a lot of experience. This is only the third time in the last 11 years that we've been at this track, so almost nobody knows it in the rain. Now, in theory, the locals have an advantage, but there aren't a lot of locals competing this weekend.
Well, Torrin Collins sitting up there on the pole, as he is, of course, a man from Alberta. John Lang, another one who got his start out here in the West as well.
I got to mention that John Lang was hurt. He's had surgery on his hip, so he's probably out for the rest of the season, and that's a shame for a guy who won here last year.
Extremely talented, won race number 1 last year. As we see the back end of this grid, Mac Wheel alongside Marco Souza, and gets set to go around RAD Torque Raceway, which has plenty of interesting intricacies, especially with the wet conditions.
Yeah, if you look at where the start line is there, that's where the pits are. So we have a kind of a technical stop and go section on the east end of the track. Then you get beyond the trees into the fast flowing section, the part that the riders like better, that we see mostly with the drone in our coverage.
They head through turns 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. That's where some of the real battles can occur. Let's go down to our Bridgestone pit reporter, Sarah Said.
Thanks, Marshall. Torrin Collins made history in race 1 here in Edmonton in round 3 of the Bridgestone CSBK Championship when he recorded the largest margin of victory in pro Supersport history with a 30-second win. Still, he managed to continue that success in race 2 after a red flag stoppage on lap 1 forced a full restart. The Octagon Energy Services rider jumped out to an early lead and managed to stay ahead of defending champion Sébastien Tremblay for a few laps before gaining space and cruising the rest of the way for a 7-second victory. The Alberta native has 5 wins in 6 races in 2025, stretching his lead to 29 points with 3 races remaining this season. Collins says driving in wet conditions does impact his driving style a bit, but his goal is to try to keep things as usual as much as possible, but moving with a bit more caution. Back to you.
Thank you, Sarah. As we get set to go here, 18 laps at RAD Torque Raceway. It's Torrin Collins, Andrew Van Winkle, and Sébastien Tremblay, your front row, as the starting lights are out, and we are away. Great flyaway from Alex Michel, beginning in the middle of that second row as he already passes Tremblay, who's fading backwards quickly, and you see out in front, in the lead immediately, it is Andrew Van Winkle.
And Tremblay really careful there. I don't think it was just a bad start. Worth mentioning that both Collins, our championship leader, and Tremblay, our potentially outgoing champion, are on their spare bikes, so they don't look like the bikes we're used to seeing.
Absolutely. The clear visors on as well, with the spray kicking off the rear tire in the wet conditions here at RAD Torque Raceway as they carefully tiptoe their way through the west end of this track.
And there you can see Tremblay taking it very easy on that all-white GSXR 750. Remember, he was the guy who really set the mold for where this class has gone with the Evo 2 rules.
Torrin Collins, the number 71 right there. He has won 5 of the 6 races so far this year in Supersport as they make their way past the start-finish straight for the very first time here at RAD Torque Raceway in race number 3. And Van Winkle already extending a bit of a gap on Alex Michel.
And we talked about this before. It's interesting. You know, the original rules for this class were very much 600cc oriented. And here we have a GSXR 600, and the 750s are eligible on the Suzuki lineup, leading a Kawasaki 636. So these are original rule bikes.
The Octagon Energy Services Suzuki of Torrin Collins looking backwards there at Justin Napick, the 191, pushing the pace here early on and able to get all the way up into 4th position as he began back in 7th after qualifying with a 120.9.
And as the police like to say, Justin Napick is known to us, and he has lots of laps, has taught lots of people to race here, has been fast in every class of motorcycle, and it's great to see. And I know Justin Napick, and he will not be giving Collins any room to maneuver.
Wants to push the pace and get as far up this running order as he can. Right now, he's one spot ahead of Elliott Vieira, and Sebastian Tremblay falling back from third into that sixth position and now down into seventh as Laurent Liberte Gerard passes him as well.
Yeah, good bottleneck there for, second through seventh. Really good racing here, and I think that Michel is under a lot of pressure, and he's going to have to start rowing. If you look here, you can see the challenge that they're facing, particularly Michel trying to hold second, is a lot of the track is still pretty wet.
You can see the depth of the midfield as Knapik has made his way through on Torrin Collins, and now Knapik up past Alex Michel into second place as well. And can he start to put his head down and put a charge towards Andrew Van Winkle, who's really extending a gap on the field. But man, there's a lot of riders here, as you say, from second through seventh.
So is this the reverse of the commentator's curse, that we've actually pumped Knapik's tires and he decided to deliver for us? Because I guarantee you Michel has no clue who he is.
Knapik, Michel, Collins, Vieira, all right there. And they are trying to push this pace right now as you see the track trying to dry itself out, but the riders looking for as much grip as possible.
Let's be a little negative. You can see our cameraman at the carousel has decided to pick out our points leader, Collins. And the problem Collins has, he's got to think about the championship standings.
We'll be back with more after this. Portions of the Bridgestone Canadian Superbike Championship are brought to you in part by Importations Thibault, Canadian Kawasaki Motors, and EBC Brakes and Clutches. Closed captioning for the Bridgestone Canadian Superbike Championship is brought to you in part by MotorcycleCourse.com, Keen Truck Incorporated, and Revs for Rhett. Welcome back to RAD Torque Raceway, making our way through lap number 3. Great battle. Second through seventh position. Is it Suzuki, Yamaha, and Kawasaki, your top 5 right now. But this has been the fun and the strength of the Supersport category this year, Colin. The number of riders we've seen in the midfield of the middleweight class that have been battling for podium positions.
Yeah, and I think Justin Knapik is dragging this group around. He has lots of experience on this track, certainly knows where the puddles are and whatnot. Now, we don't have a lot of fast locals. Ian Wall, who normally would be a fast local, got hurt. John Bully, who was quite successful on Superbike last year on a Honda, he hasn't entered. So Knapik's really kind of representing for the Alberta riders.
Incredible development of Laurent Liberte Gerard's effort throughout this season, as you see the 57 Yamaha right there trying to close down on Torrin Collins. Only the top 3 of Van Winkle, Knapik, and Collins running in the 128s on that last lap around.
And if you told Liberte Gerard that you are going to be on top of Collins and looking for a move, he would be thrilled, because they are in slightly different spots in their career, and Liberte Gerard has not spent time learning to race in Spain recently.
And if anybody wondered whether or not the leg dangling approach of Torrin Collins would go away in the wet, no, we just saw that it is absolutely back. He is comfortable in these conditions, pushing the pace on that GSXR 750 as he's trying to track down the GSXR 600 of Andrew Van Winkle out front.
Now, cynics will argue that the CSBK series doesn't have enough controversy, but fortunately we've had Collins this year, who loves to talk about riding style and has had lots of things to say about his opponents, and does not ride in a similar manner, and this is an opportunity for him to show his style up against the more conventional styles.
Justin Knapik, beginning back in 7th position, has made his way all the way up into 2nd at this point and is trying to hold off Torrin Collins as it stands right now. But man, there's a lot of pressure from in behind here as you see that field continue as Alex Michel, bit of a wobble out of the seat.
So we saw that time lap-wise, Van Winkle was just almost a second quicker than the rest of that group. And this is what you need to do. He's got clear track in front of him. He's trying to figure out the puddles. These guys arguably are slowing each other down a little bit.
Liberte Gerard taking a look here once again, same spot down the inside, different line, but Collins a little bit more economical that time as he'll hold things off and head towards where we originally began this race, number 3 at Edmonton.
Yeah, Knapik continuing to hold off this crew, but arguably creating a gap that's allowing Van Winkle to have just a bit more of a safe lead at the front. And of course, Knapik looking to win, Van Winkle looking to win at what could be argued is his home track. He's from BC for the second time in his career.
And Justin Knapik being a Westerner as well. I wonder what's going through his mind with the talented young Torrin Collins on his back tire this entire time.
Well, I hope his pit board isn't telling him it's Collins, because I don't think anybody wants to know that. But he'd also be intrigued to see that Liberte Gerard is in that conversation too. So this group of 3 are 3 people who probably didn't expect to spend very much time together on a racetrack this weekend.
And as they are battling here, You understand that Andrew Van Winkle has already crossed the start-finish stripe. There you see with the 127.879, and the gap continues to gain as down into turn number 1 over the bump in the wet, and Napick feeling the pressure from Collins.
And Michel there in 5th. Remember, he was 2nd at one point, and he has been a rising star so far this year. He was at pretty much a 28 flat in his last lap, so he is making up time. The question is, can he get in there and mix it up, because you're going to have to pick your way through this group, and there's not much space.
I wonder if Liberte Gerard, Alex Michel, all the rest are kind of watching and waiting for Torrin Collins to go on Justin Napick at this point, saying if he's going to go, we got to chase him as quick as we can on that Octagon Energy Services Suzuki.
Yeah, the problem here is A, Collins has to think about the points in the championship, and B, when he goes so far this year, pretty much no one's been able to go with him, and that was a bold move. That is not a traditional passing spot.
Will Napick be able to get him back through the puddles here down the inside, and will the drive out of the corner come from Collins, who does track down that second spot as it stands right now and dips his way in, and he will take away the second step on the podium for now as you see Andrew Van Winkle on the gap he's created.
So GSXR 750 in front of Yamaha YZF R6 600cc, and then of course the bike in 4th is another Yamaha R6. So interesting mix of machinery. Here we go on board with Collins, and he makes the move on the brakes. This is not a typical spot, not a lot of room here, and he kind of jams his way under. But what I love is Napick knows what's possible here and just holds his line and does what he knows how to do, and the move just comes right back to him. Really nice riding by Napick.
Pretty amazing that at the point that Collins got on the brakes there to make the move on Justin Napick, very clearly not ahead whatsoever, and then just held on late enough to be able to switch back as the winner of 5 of 6 Supersport races this year moves his way up into 2nd in Edmonton. Welcome back to Edmonton. Rad Torque Raceway. Andrew Van Winkle leads out in front, but the running order there with Torrin Collins, Laurent Liberte Gerard, Alex Michel, and Sebastien Tremblay, it is missing Justin Napick as of right now. He got passed for second spot by Torrin Collins, and the pace suddenly has really fallen off. The last couple of laps, he's gone down from 3rd to 5th, and now he sits back in 6th position. Any reason why that could be, Colin?
Couple of things. Collins here has found his pace, and he has some clear track in front of him, and he opened up that very close group that was really, really entertaining, but you knew it couldn't hold, and inevitably, as the track dries, different guys have more confidence. Also, Napick is used to the shorter races that happen at the regional sprint series, and I think Napick's in pretty good shape, but he does mention that multiple races over the course of a couple of days is not what he's used to, certainly at the national race distance.
A little bit tougher on the body and gives you a great appreciation as well for the riders that are with us week in, week out throughout the length of the season. And Andrew Van Winkle, certainly one of the stunning stars, a young rider, 18 at this point. And in the middleweight category last year on this track at 17 years old, the youngest ever in the middleweight category in Bridgestone CSBK to get himself a victory. But Torrin Collins and even Phil de Gama Blanchette racing in Superbike at times this year and Supersport, he's certainly some of the talented Westerners that have made the push.
Well, I don't think Collins is giving anything up, but I also think that Collins doesn't mind losing to Van Winkle as much as others because they are friends, they get along well, and I think that Collins has a lot of respect for Van Winkle. They're very different in terms of their approach, but nonetheless, Collins may be less motivated to go after Van Winkle.
As we get a good look here at Andrew Van Winkle on the Mountain View Motorsports Suzuki on that 600 and finding a way to hold off Torrin Collins in the piece. He's got to be expecting a charge from the 71 at some point, you would think, here as he crosses at 126.268 on that last lap.
And no offense to anybody in the front, but if Liberte Gerard is right with Collins, that makes me think Collins isn't all out at this point.
He's sitting up a little bit and pushing the pace around as much as he can given the conditions, but wanting to get through safe and thinking about the championship as well at large as Torrin Collins.
I got to mention Liberte Gerard running pretty much every race his bike's eligible for, so he's an Iron Man here. This is his 5th race of the weekend. He still has 1 Superbike race to go, so he is doing a terrific job, and like Michel, he's another guy who's attracting a lot of attention and definitely climbing that ladder right now.
When we talk about the wear and tear on the body as Justin Napick and the endurance of having to go around, how about Laurent Liberte Gerard not just doing it once or twice, but 6 races throughout the weekend? Man, it doesn't really strike you as one of those guys that's in the greatest shape to be able to pull the bike around, Supersport or Superbike, but he's certainly been doing it at a high level here in Edmonton.
Well, I'm sure I've mentioned that when the season kicked off in Ontario, he was endurance racing a mini bike at a go-kart track, so he's definitely been doing what he can to get ready.
As you see our top 3 right there, heading towards the start-finish stripe to begin lap number 11. Van Winkle out in front of Torren Collins, and Laurent Liberte Gerard, the 57, in third right now as he thinks back fondly about his first time to the podium here in Bridgestone CSBK 2025.
Well, that wasn't expected. Like, to see everyone crash in front of me, I was like, all right, okay. At that moment, I just lost the count. And then after that, I saw Trevor also in the same lap on the ground. So I just decided to still pushing because I was thinking maybe there's going to be a red flag or not. But never mind, there wasn't any red flag. So I just kept pushing and pushing. And on my pit board, it never says my position. Because for me, it's my first year, I just want to focus on getting better. And then when I went to the hot pit, the guys from the CSBK just stopped me and said, you got to go to the podium. So that's where I knew I was actually third on my first race at Shubenacadie. So I was like, oh man, okay. That was something, that was wild.
Well, Liberte Gerard is the master of understatement. It was more than something, and you've got to admire the effort. And the guy has so much heart, and if there's an opportunity, he is ready to rush through that door. Great
development on the season so far, and for the first time in this race, we have dipped into the 125s as Laurent Liberte Gerard and the rest of the field heating things up here, winding down race number 3. Portions of the Bridgestone Canadian Superbike Championship are brought to you in part by Importations Thibault, Canadian Kawasaki Motors, and EBC Brakes and Clutches. Welcome back to an entertaining 7th race of the Supersport category in 2025 for the Bridgestone Canadian Superbike Championship. Andrew Van Winkle leads out in front. Torren Collins, Laurent Liberte Gerard, Alex Michel, and Sebastien Tremblay as well. As this track, as we said before the break, starting to dry out significantly. Lap times are getting better, but these guys are on wet tires as well, Colin. What challenges does that represent?
Well, several, because the track has never been fully wet, but the flip side is that the wet tire, although the traction is quite good, eventually those dry spots start to overheat and eat the tire. And to some degree, I've seen some of the other competitors looking for puddles to ride in to try and cool the tire. Van Winkle just seems to be worried about ultimate pace. And if you ask yourself, Marshall, what sort of fantasies did I have as a teenager? Well, getting to lead from start to finish at your home race, that is a remarkable achievement, and this guy looks like he's going to do it.
What I find wild about this too, watching Andrew Van Winkle go around, Colin, is you can see down into turn number 1 the amount of chatter that he has in that GSXR 600, plus the wet, plus the tires, plus leading, trying to manage things, and he looks completely unfazed.
Yeah, and it's interesting because in theory, this is an inferior bike to the 750s ridden by people like Collins and Tremblay, and particularly, say, Vieira's Ducati, and Elliott has not been having a good season. He's down in 6th on the V-twin, but this is not the package that you would think could be dominant to this degree, but the conditions have very much played to Van Winkle, and he was ready to go and did what needed to be done right at the start of this race, and aided, in my opinion, by Collins not being as motivated as he sometimes has been.
If Collins would have put his head down and done everything possible to go and track Andrew Van Winkle down, you really do wonder, though, based on the way Van Winkle is riding, would he have been able to hold off the Octagon Energy Services Suzuki?
Well, it's funny you saying that when we're watching Van Winkle using every inch of the track. You couldn't be pushing hard. You look in the background there, you can see Liberte Gerard and Michel starting to have a pretty good dispute, and that, my friend, is for a podium spot.
And with a 6-second advantage over Torren Collins, crossing the stripe to begin lap number 17. What caught my attention is no pit board comes out for Van Winkle, just double thumbs up coming from the side of the pits there that time. For
and interesting, the next bike he's going to catch is that of his team owner.
Right, yeah, Marco Souza up ahead of him, running in 10th position right now.
And when you're going to pass the patron, you want to be very tidy about it.
As you can see how much on the racing line this track at RAD Raceway in Edmonton, Alberta has been drying out, despite the fact that they will go through a couple of puddles here headed towards the back section.
Yeah, we definitely can see Van Winkle has not slowed down. You can see him just brushing the edge of that puddle when we go through the part we call the crossover. Now we're heading to the far west end of the track, the more flowing section, and this definitely suits Van Winkle. Now, interesting, there's a bump right here where he crashed 2 races ago trying to catch Collins, and that was a spectacular battle that unfortunately didn't play out Van Winkle's way, although he was nice enough to go to the podium and celebrate with his friend.
And for those watching at home, when we say 2 races ago, That was this weekend. This is a triple header. There's been a lot of racing around Rad Torque here as Van Winkle looking for the appropriate spot to go around Marco Souza as you see the Suzuki side by side as Suzuki looks for their 12th consecutive win here in the middleweight category.
Yeah, amazing since we revised the rules and we went into the last race 2 years ago at Shannonville with the first opportunity for this GSXR 750 to be available for the series, and Tremblay went from a 600 Suzuki to a 750 and immediately was successful, and he has been the gold standard until the arrival of Torren Collins.
Yeah, absolutely. As the final lap has begun, and Andrew Van Winkle ready to parade his way around with a big gap ahead of Torren Collins, a little over 6 seconds still the difference between the 45 and 71.
Into the second carousel, and you lift your eyes way in the distance. You can see those heavy clouds that are drifting away, fortunately, as the track dries, but nobody in the foreground of this shot, and that's what you want to see. He was careful picking off Souza, lost a little bit of time there, but no drama, and that's what he's looking for, just get it to the finish.
Now, a couple of corners ago, you could actually hear him get off the throttle almost completely for a second. It seems like the maturity, despite being 18 years old, he understands, okay, I've got the advantage, I got the thumbs up coming from the pit wall. It's time to bring this thing home in one piece.
No, people have commented that Van Winkle is kind of an old soul. He doesn't play like some of the younger guys who he hangs out with. He's maybe a little more thoughtful, but he does not make a lot of mistakes.
As Andrew Van Winkle, tremendous effort so far in this season and still alive in the championship chase despite the fact that Torren Collins has won 5 of 6 races coming in. There is a new winner here at Rad Torque Raceway. Massive appreciation from his dad on the pit wall as the checkered flags are out, and Torren Collins brings it home. So 6 seconds behind Van Winkle, a dominant performance for the 45, and Laurent Liberte Gerard as well in 3rd position back on the podium.
And he held off Michel, and that was a good battle for position, and both those two are a focus of attention. They've both been doing very, very well this season.
3rd career Pro Supersport victory here for Andrew Van Winkle, and Suzuki now surpasses Honda, who had a run with Jody Christie back in 2012-2013 for consecutive race victories.
Yeah, and back then Christie was battling Jordan Zoke as the top racer for Kawasaki in that class.
Let's head down to our Bridgestone pit reporter Sarah Said, who has our winner, Andrew Van Winkle.
Congratulations on the win, Andrew. How does it feel to get the #1 spot?
Oh, it felt good. That was an interesting race. Rolling up to pre-grid and the track being dry and everybody on wets. It was a slippery, fun race, and I came out on top, so I couldn't ask for more.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Sebastian Tremblay, the defending champion, now mathematically eliminated, 63 points down, as are Elliot Vieira and Alex Michel. It's just Torren Collins and Andrew Van Winkle in the championship, but perhaps a change in machinery going to the final round for Torren Collins.
And you got to say Michel on that 636 Kawasaki. That is a terrific effort against a very deep field.
A great battle between those two, and we expect that in round number 4 at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park as Suzuki continues to lead over Ducati. Now 22 straight podiums for Suzuki. They sit 12 back of Kawasaki, which had that streak from 2018 to 2023. But Andrew Van Winkle, one of the young, talented Canadians, making his mark on the sport with a victory here at Rad Torque Raceway in Alberta.